Hi YouTubers! I thought I'd make a quick video today and give you an update on my orchids. How I grow them, how they're doing, and how you too can have beautiful, healthy orchids all year round. A lot of people throw these out. You know, they spend $25 or whatever on a beautiful orchid in a nice container. They watch it flower on beautiful spikes, and then they throw them out. Here we have my orchid with its seed pod that's been growing for several months now, and when it's all dry and ready, I'm going to send this off to California and let a company that grows these out for you, let them do it, because you need a lab and you need sterile conditions and it's a whole process, and it's very, very hard to do at home on your own. So I'm going to let the experts do it. But anyway, this is a nice healthy mini Phalaenopsis, and here you can see the last video I did with this in the pot. Now I have not removed this from this pot. It's been in here since I put it in there many months ago at the beginning of last summer. It originally had one little root coming out of the hole here, and as you can see, I'm going to bring it closer to the camera for you. As you can see, there are now many healthy roots coming out here. Let's tip the bottom here. Now I do not remove this from this. This is a ceramic fish, and inside here I have bark, perlite, and charcoal, and it is moist because I watered this the other day, so it's still moist. And I will not water this again for about 10 days, especially in the winter. I actually go a little bit longer. In the summer, when it's hot in here and this dries out quicker, I might go only about a week before I re-soak it. You really want to look at your orchids and the bark, and the orchids it's gonna tell you what it needs. You want the bark to be completely dry before you water it. And if it's not, let it go. If in doubt, if you're not sure, wait another day, even two. It will not hurt your orchid. You're always better to err on the side of being too dry than too wet. Orchid roots do not like to sit against moisture. If they do, they will turn black and they will rot. It's as simple as that. If you let your orchid tips sit in a tray of water, if these were to grow down and go into my little humidity tray, and I'll show you what that looks like right here. Now this is not pretty. This is a glass tray, and I have a little plastic ring here, and then I have gravel. And what this does is it holds moisture, but this little ring in the center allows me to have this above the water line. So there is humidity evaporating, which the plant loves, but the roots themselves are never allowed to touch the water. The water is not allowed to wick up into the bark. If I had moss in here, it surely would wick the water up like a sponge, hold the water against the roots, and you would have dieback. You would have rotting roots very, very quickly. I can't emphasize that enough. In the beginning of my learning how to grow orchids, I used moss because a lot of people online recommend using moss. Now, if you lived in very, very hot environment and you had very, very dry conditions and your problem was not getting moisture to your plant, maybe then moss would be okay, as long as it dries out completely very quickly. If you have moss in your orchid and you're not in super dry conditions, and let's face it folks, most of us live in houses or apartments, we have very moderate temperate conditions. You know, we humans like to live at very moderate, mild conditions. We're not living at the extremes normally. So if your orchid is growing inside your home, your best bet is to replicate its natural environment as much as possible. Now, how does an orchid grow in its natural environment? They grow on trees. They grow on bark. The roots themselves will actually, and I'll see if I can find one to show you. Let's look at a different orchid. The roots actually bind themselves to the bark. And I hate to take this out, and I don't think I'm going to, because the more you disturb your orchid, the less happy it's going to be. And as you can see on this one, it has a little spike coming up here That is not a root. That's going to be a new flower spike. This thing is going to flower for me. And you can see, hopefully, I'm getting a little bit of glare because it's a bright sunny day here in New England. But anyway, if you can see, nice, beautiful, healthy green roots. This bark has charcoal. Now, charcoal is a natural antifungal material. This actually does a couple things. It helps to aerate the bark because it creates little spaces, and it also deters fungus from growing. Perlite now also helps to aerate your mix. It also retains some moisture, but also dries out fairly quickly. As you can see in this mix, every requirement of this plant is being met. It has air holes, so the roots are getting air. It has bark, so the roots get to attach themselves to the wood, where they then can absorb moisture very slowly over time. It needs wood. Some people grow their orchid roots in water and they do okay, but that's a whole nother process. I'm not a big fan of that. I've tried it in the past. I did not have very good luck with that. And I think, why reinvent the wheel? Nature has taught us how to grow these things, and if you do what nature does, you're going to have success. It's as simple as that. Now, this leaf, the last time I did a video, was a little tiny leaf, and as you can see, just over a few months, it's grown big and shiny and healthy. That is a brand new leaf, and we have that brand new spike coming up, and we have lots of beautiful, healthy roots in a nice mixture of bark, charcoal, and perlite. And this too sits on a humidity tray above the water line where moisture can evaporate around the leaves, and the plant is just happy as can be. I actually keep these 2 or 3 orchids over here, I keep up in a window on the south side of my house, which normally isn't recommended, but I have a giant dogwood tree outside this window which shades these orchids perfectly. They get filtered sunlight for only part of the day, and they're as happy as you can be, as you can see right here from these beautiful roots. So my advice to you is, let the orchid tell you when it needs water. Wait until it's dry. Stop disturbing your plant. Stop switching them around, trying all these different things. My advice is to go back to nature. Go back to the way they are meant to grow, which is simply in bark with charcoal and perlite, because we need those things to help aerate. In the wild, it would grow on a tree, but it would get light and it would get air and it would get moisture and it would get periods of drying out completely. So we need to replicate those things. So the bark is the tree, and the perlite and the charcoal helps to allow air to get to the roots. And the humidity tray acts like the forest floor that is slowly evaporating moisture up into the tree branches and up against the tree and to the orchid, which absorbs the moisture from the air. These are actually absorbing that moisture as it evaporates up around the plant. I let this dry out completely. I stick my finger in the bottom and in the top. I make sure that this is completely dried out, and I've gotten now so I can tell just by the weight of this if it's ready to be watered. It really gets a lot lighter, and you'll notice that too. I wouldn't recommend for a beginner to grow an orchid in a ceramic pot like this. It's a little more difficult. I really like, here I'll show you, this is another orchid, a different one. I really like these simple little clear pots because you can really monitor what's happening inside, and you can see these beautiful, look at those roots. Green, plump, happy. This plant is telling me, thank you, I'm happy. You can see the moisture that's evaporating there, but it has air holes so air can get in there. This slowly evaporates around those roots and keeps them so happy. We have an old flower spike that I didn't cut all the way back, and reason being, as you can see, they're starting to plump out here, and that's an indication that this probably is going to flower for me again in the spring. I'm not fertilizing it all over the winter, and I'm watering a little bit less because now is the time, as we're coming into fall and winter, it's time to let these rest. So we water a little bit less, we hold off on the fertilizer, and then in the spring, when we want to wake them back up, we'll start increasing our water back to 7 days instead of 10 or 14, depending on your environment. Now you have to let the bark tell you what's going on and when it's time to water. But in the spring, we increase our watering, we start fertilizing again, and you might want to increase the light a little bit too. And you'll see that your orchids will flower again. And they will go again and again for many years if you're meeting all the requirements that are needed by your orchid. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comment section. And I'd be really thrilled if you wanted to subscribe to my channel. It's very small and new, and I appreciate every single subscription, and I also appreciate every like. And I wish you all the best with your orchids. These are beautiful plants, and it's so much fun to grow these. Don't be afraid. They're not that hard. Follow the simple rules. And try to stick with one thing. The more you're disturbing your plants, I think the more you're putting them into shock over and over again. So keep it simple. Keep it basic, be consistent, and you too can grow beautiful, happy orchids. Thank you, YouTubers. Till next time, happy growing.